My name is Margie J. Brandis, and I was 29 years old when the man I loved calmly told me he wanted an open relationship because he wasn't ready to stop wondering whether someone better might exist. I met Ethan at a friend's rooftop party the previous summer. The city lights stretched endlessly behind us. Music drifted across the warm evening air. He smiled easily, the kind of smile that made complete strangers feel like old friends. We spent hours talking about movies, travel, terrible dating stories, everything and nothing. When I walked him home, he joked that letting women escort him to his apartment sounded like the fastest way to get kidnapped. I laughed. The next morning, I texted him first. He answered immediately. From that day forward, everything accelerated. Dinner dates, lazy Sundays, shared playlists, movie marathons, road trips with no destination. He had a way of making ordinary moments feel unforgettable. Some days he was incredibly affectionate, curious about my work, interested in my family, wrapped around me like I was the safest place he'd ever known. Other days, he disappeared emotionally, quiet, distant, impossible to reach. Whenever I asked what was wrong, "I just need space." Eventually, I stopped asking. I convinced myself relationships were naturally complicated, that everyone had difficult seasons. My best friend Ryan wasn't convinced. "So, you two official yet?" I hesitated. "I think so. We've never really defined it." He looked at me carefully. That's usually not a great sign. I ignored him. One evening, we were lying in bed. He scrolled absent-mindedly through social media while I traced circles across his shoulder. Without warning, he spoke. "I don't think I'm ready for exclusivity." The words landed softly, almost gently, which somehow made them hurt more. I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He sighed. "I really like you. I just, I don't want to feel trapped." I waited. "I think we should keep things open. No pressure. No expectations. Just honesty." For several long seconds, I couldn't find my voice. "You mean, we can date other people?" "If we want," he answered. "I'm not seeing anyone. I just don't want either of us feeling boxed in." It sounded rehearsed, like he'd repeated those sentences many times before saying them aloud. Finally, I nodded. "Okay." He smiled with visible relief. "I knew you'd understand." The following morning, he kissed my forehead, borrowed one of my hoodies, reminded me we were meeting friends on Friday, as though nothing had changed, but everything had. Friday evening arrived. Most of his yoga friends talked endlessly about freedom, energy, living without labels. I smiled politely, pretending to understand, pretending not to notice how perfectly Ethan seemed to fit into that world. Driving home, I finally asked, "So, how exactly does this work?" He sighed dramatically. "Why does everything need rules?" "It's simple. If something happens, we tell each other. No guilt. No control." He presented it as freedom. To me, it sounded like standing beside an open door while pretending nobody intended to leave through it. For the first week, nothing obvious changed. He still texted every morning, still came over, still held my hand. I almost convinced myself the conversation had simply been theoretical. Then, the small changes began. Late nights, hidden phone screens, longer gaps between messages, the smell of unfamiliar perfume lingering on his jacket after nights out. One Saturday morning, he posted a story online. 2 wine glasses. Someone laughing across the table. Only a reflection visible in the restaurant window. I quietly asked about it later. "Just a friend." He answered immediately. "You're reading too much into things." Every concern became my problem. Every question became insecurity. Every uncomfortable feeling became evidence that I wasn't modern enough. One evening, Ryan looked at me across my kitchen table. "You know something?" "What?" "You're not in an open relationship." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "You're just single." And nobody bothered telling you. His words stayed with me long after he left, because somewhere deep down, I already knew he was right. I just wasn't ready to admit it. After that conversation, life settled into something that barely resembled a relationship. On paper, nothing had changed. Ethan still texted me good morning, still spent a few nights each week at my house, still wrapped his arms around me while we watched movies. From the outside, we looked exactly the same. Only now, everything felt temporary. Every kiss came with a question mark. Every goodbye carried uncertainty. Whenever he disappeared for a day or two, I reminded myself, this is what you agreed to. It became a mantra, not because I believed it, because I needed something to silence the anxiety. Then the little changes became impossible to ignore. He'd vanish for entire weekends, come back smelling like expensive perfume, laugh at messages while turning his phone away from me. Every time I asked, he smiled patiently. You're overthinking. One Thursday evening, he called unexpectedly. I'm coming over. An hour later, he walked into my house carrying takeout, like nothing had happened. Like the previous 72 hours simply didn't exist. He kissed my forehead. I missed you. For a brief moment, I almost believed him. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down. The smile disappeared. His entire posture changed. He quickly flipped the phone over. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah, he answered too quickly. Just work. We finished dinner in almost complete silence. Later that night, as he slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling. Not angry, not jealous, just empty. The next morning, he left early. Ryan stopped by around noon. One look at my face, and he knew. Still doing the open relationship? I nodded. He sighed heavily. You know, I've been trying not to interfere. But you're disappearing. What do you mean? The old Margie would have laughed by now. The old Margie would have argued. The old Margie would have wanted something. You don't even seem present anymore. I looked down at my coffee. I don't think I am. Ryan reached into his pocket, pulled out my phone. You still have that dating app? I deleted it months ago. No. He smiled. You deactivated it. He handed me the phone. Reactivate it. I laughed quietly. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking whether you're willing to live by the rules he insisted on. For several minutes, I simply stared at the screen. Then, without thinking too much, I pressed reactivate. I expected nothing. Within 24 hours, there were dozens of matches, normal conversations, normal people, no games, no cryptic messages, no disappearing acts. After exchanging messages for several days, I agreed to meet someone. Her name wasn't dramatic. Her life wasn't chaotic. She wasn't trying to save me, or fix me, or test me. She simply seemed kind. His name was Daniel. We met at a small coffee shop downtown. He arrived 5 minutes early, already holding a table. When I apologized for traffic, he smiled. No worries. I ordered you a latte. I remembered you mentioned vanilla. That tiny gesture hit me harder than I expected. Someone had actually listened. We talked for almost 3 hours. Books, travel, work, family. Nobody checked another phone. Nobody disappeared halfway through dinner. Nobody made me wonder whether I was enough. When we finally stood to leave, Daniel smiled. I had a really good time. So did I. Driving home, I realized something strange. I hadn't thought about Ethan once during the entire evening. That realization scared me. Not because I missed him, because I didn't. The following week, Daniel asked whether I'd like dinner, then a walk along the river afterward. I said yes. Nothing extraordinary happened. No dramatic fireworks, no overwhelming chemistry. Just peace. When he kissed me goodnight, it felt honest, simple, mutual. I drove home smiling. The next morning, Ethan texted, "You seem busy lately. Everything okay?" I answered honestly. "Yeah, just seeing someone." Three dots appeared immediately. Disappeared. Returned. Finally. "Wait. Seriously? I thought we were just keeping things open." I smiled sadly. "We are." 20 minutes later, he called. I answered. His voice sounded tight. "You're actually dating someone?" "You wanted honesty, so I'm being honest." Silence. "I didn't think—" He stopped himself. "What?" "I didn't think you'd actually do it." There it was. The truth. He never wanted equality. He wanted permission. Permission for himself. Not for me. That afternoon, I posted a simple photograph. 2 coffee cups. No faces. No captions. Just sunlight across a cafe table. By evening, my phone showed 7 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and 1 final message. "Who's the other cup for?" I stared at the screen for a long moment, then quietly placed my phone face down. For the first time since agreeing to his version of love, I realized something. I hadn't broken any promises. I had simply started believing that I deserved the same freedom he demanded for himself, and somehow, that frightened him far more than losing me ever had. The change wasn't dramatic. It was almost invisible. For the first time in months, I stopped organizing my life around Ethan's unpredictability. Instead, I started living. Daniel and I kept seeing each other. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. Sometimes we met for coffee before work. Sometimes dinner after long days. Sometimes we simply walked through the city talking about books, family, and everything in between. There were no games, no disappearing acts, no mysterious weekends. If he was running late, he texted. If I needed space, I said so. It amazed me how extraordinary simple honesty could feel after months of emotional gymnastics. About a week after my picture of the 2 coffee cups, Ethan showed up at my apartment. No warning, just knocking. Hard. When I opened the door, he looked exhausted. "You've really been seeing someone?" "Yes." He laughed bitterly. "I honestly thought you were bluffing." "I wasn't." He stared past me into the apartment. "Can I come in?" "No." He looked genuinely shocked. "Seriously? You wanted openness. You have it. You don't get automatic access anymore." His jaw tightened. "This isn't what I meant." "There it is," I answered quietly. "What?" "The truth." "What truth?" "You never wanted an open relationship?" "You wanted an open relationship for yourself." Silence. He looked away. I needed freedom. And now I have it too." "That's different." I almost smiled. "Why?" "Because—" He struggled. "I didn't think you'd actually move on." The sentence hung between us. Finally, he admitted it. "I thought you'd wait." Those 4 words explained everything. He hadn't wanted equality. He wanted security. Someone dependable waiting while he experimented with uncertainty. I leaned against the doorframe. "You wanted me to remain emotionally exclusive, while you stayed emotionally available to everyone." "I wasn't thinking like that." "You were. You just never said it out loud." He rubbed both hands across his face. "I made a mistake." "I know. I've been thinking about us constantly." "I know. I miss you." "I believe you." His expression softened. "You do?" "Yes. But missing me isn't the same thing as respecting me." That landed harder than anger ever could. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he asked, "Who's the guy?" "Daniel." "What does he do?" I laughed quietly. "Why?" I want to know." "No." He frowned. "No? You don't get details about my life anymore." He looked genuinely hurt. "So that's it? You've replaced me?" I shook my head. "No. I replaced the version of myself that kept accepting less than I deserved." He opened his mouth, closed it again. There wasn't really anything left to argue. After he left, I called Ryan. Guess who showed up? Ethan. You already know? He texted me asking if you were serious about dating someone. What did you tell him? The truth. That you finally looked happy. I smiled. I am. Ryan laughed. I've been waiting months to hear you say that. The weeks that followed became surprisingly peaceful. Daniel never asked me to define everything immediately. He never pressured me. One evening over dinner, he simply asked, "Can I ask something?" "Sure. Are you actually ready to date?" I appreciated the honesty. I wasn't, I admitted. But I think I'm finally becoming ready. He nodded. Good. I'd rather wait for someone emotionally present than rush someone who's still healing. I stared at him. Nobody had ever spoken to me like that. Not once. Meanwhile, the messages from Ethan became increasingly desperate. Can we talk? I understand now. I don't want this anymore. Then one evening, a longer message. I don't want the open relationship anymore. I'll delete every app. I'll block everyone. I just want us back. I read it once, then quietly locked my phone. Several minutes later, it rang again. Against my better judgment, I answered. His voice broke immediately. I was wrong. I know. No. I mean completely wrong. I thought freedom meant keeping my options. I never realized I was throwing away certainty. I remained silent. He continued. I've watched you become happier. Healthier. You smile again. And it kills me. I closed my eyes. Why? Because I finally understand. I wasn't trapped. I was loved. Those words, months earlier, would have destroyed me. Now, they simply arrived too late. I'm glad you finally understand, I said honestly. But understanding doesn't erase consequences. Silence. Then quietly. So there's no chance? I looked across my apartment. Fresh flowers on the table. A book Daniel had recommended sitting open beside my coffee. Sunlight filling the room. Peace. No, I answered gently. The relationship you want back only existed before you asked me to compete with strangers. And that woman doesn't exist anymore. The call ended. I placed my phone face down. For the first time, his regret no longer felt like closure. It felt like confirmation. He finally valued what he had. Only after discovering someone else already did. After that phone call, something inside me finally settled. Not because Ethan had apologized, because I no longer needed him to. There was nothing left waiting for his understanding. Nothing left hoping he would eventually choose me. He already had. Just far too late. Life with Daniel continued quietly. One Saturday morning, we wandered through a local farmer's market. He stopped in front of a flower stand. Without saying anything, he bought a small bouquet of sunflowers. When he handed them to me, I laughed. What are these for? They reminded me of you, he answered simply. No special occasion? He smiled. Does there have to be one? That single question lingered with me all afternoon. For 3 years, affection had always felt conditional. Now it simply existed. No performance, no uncertainty, no competition. A week later, Ethan called again. This time, I didn't answer. Instead, he left a voicemail. Margie, I've deleted every dating app. I haven't spoken to anyone. I ended everything. I finally understand what commitment actually means. I deleted the message, not because I wanted to hurt him, because nothing inside me responded anymore. The next attempt came through mutual friends. Ryan called one evening. You know, Ethan asked me to talk to you? I guessed. He wanted me to convince you to meet him. What did you say? Ryan laughed. I told him something. What? I told him the woman he keeps looking for doesn't exist anymore. I smiled quietly. He didn't like that answer. He shouldn't. Another month passed. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, Daniel and I were leaving a bookstore when I noticed someone standing across the street. Ethan. He didn't wave. He didn't cross toward us. He simply stood there, watching. Daniel noticed him too. You know him? I used to. Daniel didn't ask another question. He simply reached for my hand. Not possessively, not defensively, naturally. The gesture lasted only a second, but Ethan saw it. His shoulders lowered, almost like someone finally accepting an answer they had spent months refusing to hear. He turned, walked away. Neither of us followed. That evening, as Daniel drove me home, he finally asked, "Do you want to talk about him?" I looked out the window. No. Not because I'm avoiding it, but because there's nothing left to say. He nodded. I understand. And he truly did. That, more than anything, confirmed I had chosen the right future. Months continued passing. One afternoon, I unexpectedly received a handwritten letter, no return address. Inside, only a single page. Margie, I spent months believing I wanted excitement, then months believing I wanted you back. Now I finally understand what I actually wanted was certainty without responsibility. You gave me loyalty I never earned. I confused peace with boredom and freedom with selfishness. I'm not writing to ask for another chance. I'm writing because you deserved an apology without expectations attached to it. I hope your life is everything I failed to appreciate. Ethan. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back inside the envelope, then tucked it into a drawer. Not because I planned to read it again, because it no longer carried any emotional weight. It had become history. 6 months later, Daniel asked me to dinner. Nothing unusual. Until dessert arrived. The waiter placed a tiny velvet box beside my plate. Daniel smiled nervously. I've learned something from loving you. What? He reached across the table. Love shouldn't make someone wonder where they stand. It should make them feel safe. He opened the box. Inside rested a simple ring. No dramatic speech, no audience. Just honesty. Margie J. Brandis. Would you marry me? Tears filled my eyes instantly, not because I was remembering Ethan, because for the first time, someone had chosen me. Without comparison, without conditions, without checking the market first. Yes, I whispered. Absolutely yes. Looking back now, people sometimes ask whether I regret agreeing to Ethan's open relationship. Never. Because if I had refused, I might have spent years trying to convince someone to choose me. Instead, he unknowingly opened the very door I was too afraid to walk through. My name is Margie J. Brandis. The man I loved once asked for an open relationship because he wasn't ready to be exclusive. He believed freedom meant having more options. What neither of us realized was that the only person who truly found freedom was me. And the greatest love of my life began the moment I finally stopped asking someone else to decide whether I was enough. Nearly a year passed after the day Ethan asked for an open relationship. Some memories faded so gradually I didn't even notice they were gone. I stopped checking my phone before bed. Stopped wondering whether someone might suddenly disappear for days. Stopped questioning whether asking for honesty made me difficult. Life became wonderfully ordinary. Daniel and I never rushed anything. We built our relationship the exact opposite way Ethan and I had built ours. One honest conversation at a time. If something bothered one of us, we said it. If one of us needed space, we explained why. There were no mind games, no emotional guessing, no invisible competitions with strangers. One Saturday morning, we painted the guest room together. At one point, I accidentally splattered blue paint across his sleeve. He looked down, then laughed. I guess this shirt belongs to the house now. I laughed with him. The sound surprised me. Months earlier, I had forgotten laughter could feel effortless. That evening, Ryan stopped by. He looked around the house and smiled. You know what? What? You don't flinch anymore. I frowned. What do you mean? You used to glance at your phone every few minutes. You used to expect disappointment. Now, you actually relax. I looked around my living room. Fresh flowers, music playing softly, dinner in the oven, Daniel reading on the couch. Ryan was right. The anxiety had quietly disappeared. Several weeks later, I received another unexpected message. Not from Ethan, from Chloe, the same friend who had spent months convincing him that commitment meant settling. The message was short. Margie, I owe you an apology. I encouraged Ethan to gamble with something he should have protected. Watching everything fall apart made me realize I confuse excitement with happiness. I'm sorry for the part I played. I stared at the message for several moments, then typed one sentence. I hope you both find the lives you're looking for. I wished her well, nothing more. The past no longer needed my energy. A month later, Ryan called. You'll never guess who I ran into. Ethan. Yeah. How's he doing? He looked. Ryan searched for the right word. Peaceful. He said therapy finally helped. He isn't asking about you anymore. I smiled quietly. I'm glad. Ryan laughed. That's honestly what you say? It is. I don't need him miserable. I just needed us to stop hurting each other. Winter arrived. One snowy evening, Daniel and I decorated the house for Christmas. As we hung lights across the porch, he looked at me. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever wish things had happened differently? I thought about it carefully, long enough that snow began settling across the railing. Finally, I answered honestly. No. He looked surprised. Not even a little? I shook my head. If Ethan hadn't asked for an open relationship, I probably would have spent years trying to become someone I wasn't. I would have kept believing I needed to earn certainty. Daniel gently squeezed my hand. And now? Now I know love shouldn't feel like an audition. Those words stayed with both of us. The following spring, Daniel proposed. Not with fireworks. Not in front of strangers. Just the two of us during a quiet weekend by the lake. He smiled nervously. I don't need to compare you to anyone. I don't need to wonder whether something better exists. I already know. You're home. Before he even finished, I was already crying. Yes, I whispered. Absolutely yes. Looking back now, people occasionally ask whether agreeing to Ethan's open relationship was the biggest mistake of my life. I always smile before answering. No. My biggest mistake was believing someone else's uncertainty meant I wasn't enough. The open relationship simply exposed the truth. It showed me the difference between someone who wanted unlimited options and someone who simply wanted me. My name is Margie J. Brandes. The man I loved once told me he wasn't ready to be exclusive because he needed to know whether someone better might exist. He thought opening our relationship would give him freedom. Instead, he unknowingly opened the door that led me toward the life I'd actually been waiting for. Sometimes, the greatest gift someone gives you is finally showing you exactly why they're the wrong person to spend forever with.